The International Maritime Organization, IMO, has mandated that from January 1st, 2020, bunker fuel used for ship propulsion must not contain more than 0.5% sulfur, unless scrubbers are used to remove the excess SO2 from the exhaust gas. My name is Simon Weiland, and I'm a Technical Applications Engineer with Optimized Gas Treating. This is the first part in a multi-part series in which we will discuss the various options available to meet the IMO 2020 regulations. On average, bunker oil contains about 2.5 weight% sulfur, although up to 3.5 weight% is not unusual. Prior to this new regulation, only 2% of all bunker oil met the new standard. Globally, the additional sulfur to be removed will potentially require an increased SRU capacity of 20,000 tons per day. In 2016, total global sulfur recovery was 128,000 tons per day, so an increased production capacity of 15% would be needed in order to meet the IMO 2020 mandate, if all the bunker fuel were to be converted to low sulfur. Several ways have been proposed to meet the sulfur emissions limits from ships. Some are post-combustion, while others are pre-combustion. They include exhaust gas SO2 scrubbing, using sweeter crudes, desulfurizing existing very high sulfur fuel oil, VHSFO, and refinery modifications. Refinery modifications are a big investment and require long lead times, and in today's uncertain markets, this really does not make for a very good option. Using sweeter crudes, which already have less than 0.2% sulfur, in order to produce fuel with less than 0.5% sulfur is not viable either, because these crudes are very expensive and typically in short supply. They will likely remain so for the foreseeable future. Stack gas SO2 scrubbing is a so-called end-of-pipe approach. These work by taking seawater as the solvent and contacting the stack gas before it is emitted to the atmosphere. We will discuss this approach extensively in a separate video to show how ProTreat can be used for the optimization and design of SO2 scrubbers, with seawater as a once-through and seawater spiked with caustic as a recirculating design. Hydrodesulfurizing existing high sulfur fuel oils, HSFO, becomes the most attractive option for converting VHSFO to LSFO by simply removing more of the sulfur from this fuel oil in a conventional hydrodesulfurization unit, or HDS. It would require some capital investment and would also put an increased load on the Claus sulfur recovery unit as well as downstream gas processing units because of the higher H2S throughput. This option would also generate sour water having higher ammonia and would end up pushing this ammonia to the SRU as sour water acid gas, or SWAG, commonly known as SWAG. A twofold increase in sulfur means 6 to 8 times more ammonia, which presents a real challenge to the hydraulic capacity of an existing SRU. Nevertheless, adapting SRUs to higher sulfur throughputs in existing equipment is probably the most rational approach. Implementing this approach, however, requires either 1. Increasing the capacity of existing SRUs, or 2. Forcing turned down units into full production. Now, this second option reduces the refiner's ability to handle unforeseen upsets and outages, and thus the reliability of the SRUs must be kept high, as their flexibility would be reduced. This is really an area where SulfurPro can help by assessing such things as sulfidic corrosion and the effect of changing process conditions on unit performance. Now, one of the quickest and simplest ways to increase an existing SRU's capacity is to use oxygen-enriched combustion air. Nitrogen in air is a diluent, occupying a large volume that could otherwise be better occupied by H2S and the SRE feed gas. To put this into perspective, around 78% of combustion air is non-reactive nitrogen. Now, this means that nitrogen limits unit capacity, because the unit has to push all of that nitrogen through the process. Now, you may be wondering, is there anything positive about having this nitrogen in the combustion air? And the answer is yes. It significantly helps to mitigate the temperatures in the thermal reactor by acting as a heat sink. Now, although nitrogen is parasitic in terms of its volume, its replacement by chemically reactive H2S will increase temperatures in the thermal reactor, and will most likely push those beyond the thermal limitations of the equipment. Now this must be mitigated by other means to prevent thermally damaging the equipment. So perhaps oxygen enrichment isn't as simple as it seems at first glance, but at least we understand the problem and begin to look at solutions. So, now that we've established that oxygen enrichment is at least a viable and simple, at least on paper, solution, the question really becomes, how much oxygen enrichment is really needed? And what changes might be required for an existing unit in order to safely and efficiently incorporate this oxygen? This is the topic for the next video, and we will go into a detailed case study looking at a COPE unit or COPE unit to get a deeper understanding as to how oxygen enrichment affects various parameters within the SRU, and what this ultimately means for both the reliability of the unit and the sustainability of the unit. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.